everything.
It's everything.
Welcome to or welcome back to the Emajae Talks Everything podcast, where I talk politics, pop culture, and everything in between. I am Emajae, and I know what you're thinking. I do. You're thinking, Maj, last week I went on YouTube or I went on Spotify and I didn't see a video. I didn't hear of a video. The week before I went on YouTube, I went on Spotify, I didn't see a video and I didn't hear a video. Ooh, girl, where you been? What's up? I know what you're thinking. Here's your answer. I have been surviving this world. Like, I don't even know how else to put it. I had to take about 2 weeks off to just wrap my mind around everything happening around me, everything that's happening in the world. And I'm gonna get into more of that a little bit later in the episode, so stick around. And that's not to say that I haven't been shooting content. I really enjoy this, so I have been shooting videos. I just haven't released them. But I have been shooting videos, and yeah, I mean, I guess I'll get into more details of where I've been and why I've been gone later, but just know I have been shooting content. And in the time that y'all haven't heard from me, I've also been working on the podcast, thinking about how I really want to structure the content. As you know, we are on episode 13 of the Emajae Talks Everything podcast. However, I have decided that in between podcast episodes, which varies between me posting weekly or bi-weekly, but in between the times that I put out these podcast episodes, so much happens, and so much happens quickly. And so I really want to create a system where when things happen, I just pick up my camera, give my initial impressions, post and go. And so I'm going to be doing that as well. So if you are watching the Emajae Talks Everything podcast on my YouTube channel, then you are in luck. All you need to do is subscribe, and all of my shorter videos, my quicker clips that address maybe one topic here, more in real time, those clips will be housed on my YouTube channel, right? And so if you are interested in that content, just know that in between, the podcast episodes, which will be weekly or bi-weekly at least, if you want my opinion on things that are happening kind of in between, then you should definitely check out the YouTube channel, subscribe, and yes. Number 2, since we're doing church announcements, number 2, I've decided, since the last video where I talked about wanting to kind of give a deeper dive into things I'm watching or listening to, I have decided that I am going to create a new segment of the Emajae Talks Everything podcast. And what better way to just kick it on off, which is exactly what I'm gonna do, introducing everything keeping me entertained. This is the part of the podcast where I will be talking about things that I'm watching, listening to, shows that I've attended. And I thought, who better to kick off this segment with than the one, the only, the Cardi, the B. She just debuted her sophomore album called Am I the Drama? And I want to talk about it because, let's talk about it. So, first things first, I want to tell y'all how I experienced the album. It was something I was waiting for. I was really excited for this album because it's been years since we've heard a body of work from Cardi B. She dropped her debut album, 7 years ago? I was in a completely different place in my life. And it's just really, exciting when an artist that you like drops a full body of work. I feel like, she's had a lot of drama. She's been in and out of the news all this time. So I'm like, okay, let's hear what you've been working on for, the past 7 years. And so I stayed up until midnight last week and I listened to the album first time through, and I wrote down some of my initial thoughts. I've listened to the album a few times since then. It goes hard in the gym. It goes hard in the car. But I want to kind of go through my first thoughts of the album with y'all. So let's get into it. My favorite songs. Okay, so I'm going to go down the list of the songs that I enjoyed the most. I'm not going to do that many of them because I am going to try my best for this video not to be an hour and a half long. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah. Okay, so favorite songs. Her intro song is called Dead featuring Summer Walker. And I'm actually going to pull up the Spotify. I don't think I'm going to play them. But let's see here. Am I the Drama? Okay, so yeah. So the first song is called Dead featuring Summer Walker. My first impression of this song was, I liked it, but there's a line in this song that when I first heard it, I was like, yes, Cardi, like I'm rooting for you. And it's the line where she references how she gets back up like 10 times. Like she gets back up, she gets knocked down, but then she gets back up on the 10th time. And the reason that resonates with me a lot is because that's a nod to her very first song in her debut album, and which is one of my hype songs. It's called Get Up 10. I love that song. I play that song all of the time. And yeah, it's a personal hype song of mine. So when she made a nod to that, I was like, yes, like let's go for it. The next song that I liked is Hello. I think Hello was, a perfect number 2 song. Then she goes into Salute, which is a cute song. So let's get to Man of Your Word. Let me make sure I'm titling these correctly. Man of Your Word. Okay. So Man of Your Word, I would say is the song where Cardi goes the most vulnerable. This is where she really kind of pulls back all of the theatrics and all of the, extra, what is it? Just the extra show of it all. She really strips it down and focuses on telling us about her feelings when it comes to her ex-husband, or actually her current husband, child, because they're not divorced yet, Offset. And we have talked about Cardi B and Offset on this podcast episode before. If you haven't checked it out, here it is. We went through a complete deep dive of their history. And so it was really, really good and important, I think, for her to just address it on her album. And, one of my critiques of the album, which again, I'll give you my rating at the end of this, but one of my critiques of Cardi's album is I do feel like she spent too much time addressing her haters, like her female haters, other rap girlies in the game who honestly aren't even comparable to her. I feel like so much of her album was addressing them, and not enough of the album was reflective of this relationship that has been in the news on social media. Like, we have been in the group chat with Cardi B and Offset for 7+ years. So I was expecting to get a little bit more behind the scenes on the album, right? As an artist, we're not entitled to any of your business. But if you are going to share your business, I would expect more of it to come from your body of work, your arts, than social media. And although I enjoyed this song and some of the other ones and just the album as a whole, that would be one of my main critiques, is that I feel like I was expecting a little bit more reflection, a little bit more depth, and just overall, just a little bit more growth in terms of the kinds of topics and conversations and themes that, Cardi was bringing up. I mean, it's been 7 years. You've gone from Cardi B from Love and Hip Hop to iconic Cardi B, Grammy winner, record breaker. It's like, what does that pressure feel like? What does it feel like to be a new mom, navigating that and navigating a failing relationship and, navigating, your ops? And like, I just expected a little bit more depth. And I feel like I got an album that really was great to party to, great to dance to, great to be hyped to. She told off her female haters, and then it was like a sprinkle of, oh yeah, here's the Offset thing. I don't really know how to feel about that. For me, that kind of knocked the album down a peg, but it was still a good album nonetheless. And I appreciated her dedicating at least one album to getting vulnerable about the relationship. One of my instant favorite songs was What's Going On with Lizzo. I just love the sample. I think the way that they did it was just so creative. I loved that song. Outside. So Outside, yeah. Outside was actually a single. So we knew about the song before the album dropped. It was leaked before the album dropped. And when I heard it, I'm gonna be honest with you, before the album, I was kind of like, oh, like this just feels like such a predictable song for Cardi. So I wasn't impressed. I will say, to be fair, that when I was listening to the album and the song popped up, I liked it a lot better. I'll say that. I enjoyed the song a lot better within the context of the album than I did when it was just a single. And that's good. That's a good thing. That means that, there's a story. That means that, the order of the songs makes sense. So kudos to her. But it's a fun song. Pretty and Petty was a song dedicated to dissing Bia, and I'm gonna be honest, when I listened to it, I had no idea who she was talking about. I truly didn't even realize that it was a diss track, if I'm gonna be honest. Like, I was like, dang, she kind of going off. I don't know who she going off on, but she going off. One of my favorite songs, it was one of my favorites when I first heard the album, and right now is Every Time. Love that song. I think it's a hype song. I think she's in her bag and in her pockets. I think her lyricism is dope in this song. I just really, really, really love Every Time. Check Please is cute. Principal, cute. So overall, I would say that I would rate Cardi B's Am I the Drama album an 8 out of 10, because I think Cardi delivers. She gives us good records. She gives us different flows throughout the album. You can see that she's definitely inspired by the New York sound a lot here recently. And well, given that she's from New York, but they have a very specific sound, and you can see that and you can hear that throughout her album. But overall, I give it an 8 out of 10. I have been playing the album constantly since it dropped on Friday. And yeah, like I said, my only critique, which would have just taken it there for me, is if it would have been a little bit deeper, a little bit more reflective, and a little bit more storytelling. I just feel like that's what would have just took it there for me. I think that's it. Yeah, she dedicated her whole second project to dissing women that no one cares about instead of holding the man who cheated on her accountable. And that's it. But overall, 8 out of 10. Is Cardi the drama? Yeah. She's the drama. And honestly, on the next podcast, we're going to go into all of the drama that has been happening since Cardi released the album, with all of the rappers that she dissed and all of the, stuff that's come out about her baby daddy, Stephon Diggs. Oh my God. Y'all, we've got to talk about the fact that Cardi B is pregnant. Okay. But that's going to be next week's episode. Because it's very, very important that I get to the main part of this week's episode, which is everything in the news. And this is where it gets tricky. This is where it gets tricky. Okay. So, a few weeks ago, news hit that Charlie Kirk had been shot, had been murdered. Not sure if I can say those things on YouTube, but we'll cut them out if not. And the day that the news hit that Charlie Kirk had been killed, I shot an episode of the Emajae Talks Everything podcast. And I was learning information in real time. I was learning that, what happened in real time, basically as I was shooting the podcast. And I gave my thoughts and my opinions in real time as I was shooting. And so since then, so much has happened. I could not anticipate the aftermath of Charlie Kirk being killed. I could not anticipate the extent of which I would have opinions about how America has handled Charlie Kirk being killed. And so part of the reason why I decided to, shoot this episode was because so much has happened. And I didn't want to drop the previous episode only having talked about, the limited information that I had at that time, because at this point, I feel like I'm in a twilight zone. So much has happened. So what I'm gonna do is right here, I'm gonna step away from present Maj, and we're gonna take a quick flashback to past Maj when I was learning about what was happening in real time. So you'll get my thoughts about exactly what I felt, exactly what I was thinking, and then we're gonna come right back and we're gonna talk about the aftermath, okay? So stay tuned, stay here. And this is present Maj going away. And here is past Maj. Charlie Kirk, who is a conservatist activist. Ooh, say that 3 times fast. He's also the founder of Turning Point, which is a 501(c) organization that really focuses on traveling around different campuses and perpetuating ideals that really are aligned with MAGA and Trump's policies and ideas and values and all of those things. He is basically, in short, Donald Trump if Donald Trump wasn't a president and was running a nonprofit. And so what has happened is Charlie Kirk was taken out today. He was speaking at a school. Let's actually get the details. When I tell you, I just found out about this like right before the pod. So I'm like in real time trying to get a sense of this. But basically he was shot while he was speaking in Utah. And of course, being one of the faces of the MAGA movement, having been taken out unexpectedly the way he was, this news is everywhere. And so I wanted to comment because here you have a huge political figure who was just, made into a martyr, because that's really one of the main points that I have when it comes to this situation. I really don't know where to start with this, because what can't be lost in this conversation is the very obvious and real fact, which is Charlie Kirk became the victim of an environment that he helped create, that he was actively helping to perpetuate, and ultimately that he incited. When you go around and you talk about how you don't have empathy for others, or let's listen to some of the things that Charlie Kirk had to say when it came to his ideas and thoughts, opinions about the real issue here, which is gun violence, which requires gun reform. He has made so many comments, and mind you, we're having the conversation right now about his opinions regarding the gun violence. But let's be clear, this man was racist, sexist, xenophobic. I mean, he dedicated his life to the MAGA movement. And I thought about going more in depth about his 501c organization, about Turning Point, but I'm not gonna give him my platform to help perpetuate his BS ideas, because that's not what this is about. If you wanna know more, then you should do your research, but I'm not going to go into that. But just know that this is a man who essentially did not care about other people who did not quite literally look like him. So back on to the gun violence part. This is how he felt. This is how he feels about gun violence. Let's turn it all the way up.
We should have an honest and clear reductionist view of gun violence, but we should not have a utopian one. You will never live in a society when you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights.
It's worth it. That's his stance on gun violence. That's his stance on the environment that he has created that has led him to the current predicament. He believes that it's worth it. He believes that the lack of gun reform is okay, because at the end of the day, people are gonna die at the hands of guns, right? That's his perspective. So when you have certain political figures who I will not name, or maybe I should, I don't know, but certain political figures who I won't name, playing into this respectability politics, saying, oh, thoughts and prayers for this. And listen, today, on the same exact day that this has happened, there has been a high school shooting in Colorado. Today, that didn't even make news until people started bringing up the fact that there was a high school shooting today. Let's talk about the amount of shootings that have happened so far this year. There have been 47 school shootings in the United States so far this year as of September 10th. 24 were on college campuses, and 23 of those were on K through 12 school grounds. 19 people dead. At least 77 other victims injured so far. And those are only school shootings. We're not even talking about mass shootings as a whole in the United States. So I understand that there are people who are not going to take time out of their life to feel sorry for his family or to feel sorry for him. I don't believe that political violence is where we need to go, where we need to take this. That is not the precedent that we want to send. It has never been. It's not. But what we will not do is sit here and ignore the very fact that this man himself, in his own words, believes that this type of environment, this type of society is okay. It's worth it. This type of gun violence, mass shootings, kids. Y'all want to say thoughts and prayers to his kids, but y'all don't even care when it's actual kids who are the victims of gun violence. It really, really, really ticks me off, because this is a conversation that we should be having every single day. People are afraid to go to the movies, to go to concerts, to go here and to go there, because we don't know what is going on anymore. Charlie Kirk, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is what it is. Thoughts and prayers. And we're back. Those were my thoughts in real time. Thoughts and prayers. Okay, thoughts and prayers. That's the extent that I have. And so what I want to talk about now is kind of the backlash, or not the backlash, but the aftermath. Because, you know, when I was giving my opinions the day that it happened, I hadn't been on social media. I hadn't seen how anybody else felt about it. And I was appalled at what I saw when I got on socials. I saw a mixture of things. I saw people who did not care. I saw people who, did not care. But I saw a lot of people who were having feelings or presenting feelings of actual grief and disappointment that other people didn't care. And that is what bothered me. You know, that's what really, really bothered me is when I got on social media and saw that first of all, let's start from the beginning. There were people who, beyond the fact that there was gun violence, right? Which I think majority of us can agree is the fundamental issue here. The fundamental issue is the fact that we are in a society where you can go up to your local whatever, grab a gun that you do not need, that you cannot handle, that you are not qualified to even be carrying, do whatever. I mean, there are serious fundamental issues with our gun policies in America. And that's the issue. But that wasn't the conversation, and I guess it's, naive of me to have thought that was where the conversation was gonna go. Of course, it became about this side versus that side. And a lot of people were really up in arms about the fact that how could someone possibly have murdered Charlie Kirk? It wasn't even about the gun violence. They were just appalled that their hero, this MAGA podcaster, because let's be clear, this was an act of political violence, likely, but Charlie Kirk was not a politician. He was a podcaster. He was a podcaster with political opinions, with a political platform, but he was a podcaster nonetheless. And people who really identified with his values, his sentiments, his policies, his morals, of course, they were up in arms, which, okay, it is what it is. But there were other people who, in addition to those people, who were on social media making posts suggesting that if you did not share in their outrage, if you did not share in their sadness, then you somehow are part of the problem here. You are somehow a part of this environment that perpetuates violence against others or violence against people with different opinions. And that is what I found the most appalling. Because as I said, as past Maj just said, as you just heard, I feel like Charlie Kirk was a victim of his own, rhetoric, essentially, his own rhetoric and his own ideas. He was a victim of his own stuff, that has nothing to do with me. And that has nothing to do with the next person who pretty much went about their day and chalked this up to being a gun policy issue. Okay. You are not morally superior for having sent your thoughts and prayers to Charlie Kirk and his family. And that's what I was seeing on social media. I was seeing people compare Charlie Kirk to the likes of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And if I'm gonna be honest, that's where I drew the line. So somehow, girl, I have found my way on the Facebook, child. Now, I don't go and frequent Facebook often simply because I be knowing what's on Facebook. I be knowing the opinions that I'm going to see on Facebook. But for some reason, I went on Facebook and I was seeing the post about, we should send our thoughts and prayers. And at the end of the day, it's a family. And at the end of the day, like, you are a disgrace or you're this or you're that for not caring that a man was killed and blah, 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 blah. I was going to let that slide because at the end of the day, for all the reasons that I just said, I do not care. Okay. But when you start comparing Charlie Kirk to someone like the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., at that point, I feel like something has to be said. And so this is what I said on that day. I said, comparing Charlie Kirk to the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is diabolical at best. In fact, they couldn't be any more different, considering one is a victim of the violence he perpetuated, and the other's legacy is predicated entirely on nonviolence. I said, I've retired from gathering people on this platform, but we aren't going to do that. Please stop. And last thing, since I'm already here, if you want to send thoughts and prayers to that man, do you. However, people are not required to perform grief or grace for a man who dedicated his life to inciting harm against them. We can acknowledge, as many of us already have, that gun violence is an issue regardless of who pays the cost at any given moment. But we can also reserve our grief and heartbreak for the hundreds of other victims that did not advocate for said violence when they were alive. Remember, you are not morally superior for extending pleasantries to a man who wished harm upon you. And unless you are a fairly rich, heterosexual, Christian white man, that includes you. And those are my thoughts on the Charlie Kirk situation. No one is required to perform grief or grace for a man who dedicated his life to inciting harm against them. And if you for 1 second think that you are morally superior or a better Christian because that's how you choose to move about your life and that's the choice that you made after he was killed, that's on you. But that doesn't make it a fact. And that takes me to the next topic that I want to bring up. It's really this idea that we have got to start having real conversations about the weaponization of religion, particularly in this country, the weaponization of Christianity, because it's dangerous. If you haven't noticed, it's dangerous. So many people felt as if they were entitled to make others feel a certain kind of way out of their religion, right? It's this idea that, you know, we send thoughts and prayers because that's what Jesus would want us to do. But my question is that what Jesus would have wanted us to do? Is it? Is it? Because I don't interpret, you know, the Bible or lessons from the Bible as Jesus being the kind of, you know, person who would support the type of behavior that Charlie Kirk exemplified while he was alive. The God that I serve and the lessons that I've learned from the Bible all boil down to the fact that God is love. Love thy neighbor, right? And so I'm just trying to understand the you know, respectability politics behind Christians who feel as if they have to send these pleasantries in the name of their religion to a man who ideologically stood opposed to almost everything that the Bible stood for. This is how I know that we need to have the religion episode sooner rather than later, because there are so many conversations that we need to have. And one of the conversations that we need to have is how religion has been weaponized to harm individuals over, you know, centuries. This is not anything new, right? It's not new. We know that religion has been used to weaponize different movements. We know this. But we need to understand that what's happening in this country right now, what's fundamental to the Trump administration and the MAGA movement It's this Christian nationalism that we're seeing, right? It's this infusion between the nation, the America, and Christianity. And that's why we end up in situations where we have the 10 Commandments being required to be displayed in classrooms, right? That's why we have situations like that. Because there's this rise of Christian ideals. That's why we have these archaic abortion laws, because people are tying it back to their understanding of Christianity, right? All of these different policies and laws, right? Even when it goes to gay marriage, all of these different policies and laws that we're seeing under the Trump administration, a lot of them are in the name of Jesus. A lot of them are in the name of Jesus. Now, what Jesus they're praying to, I don't know. Because it's not mine. It's not my God. That's my God would not be okay with someone walking around devaluing other humans because they're Black or they're women or they're gay or they're disabled or they're immigrants. That's not how my God would have operated. So we have to be very, very careful when we're having these conversations about religion and when we're doing things in the name of Jesus and we're sending out these thoughts and prayers that I believe that some people just feel like they have to out of the sake of their religion. And it's like, do you though? Do you? I don't think you do. I don't think that's what God would have wanted. I don't think God would have wanted for us to isolate each other and to other, communities for arbitrary reasons. The type of rhetoric that Charlie Kirk spewed against people who did not look like him or have similar backgrounds. I mean, if we were to, what does it look like? Let's break this down. What does it look like for me, a Black woman, to feel grief for a man who made statements about how I wasn't even intellectual enough to have full cohesive thoughts? He couldn't take me serious because he didn't believe that Black women were smart enough or intelligent enough to really have full-blown intelligence and conversations and education. Why would I, in the name of my Jesus, feel grief or perform grief to satisfy other Christians for a man who didn't even think I was intelligent simply because I was a Black woman? Make it make sense. Make it make sense. So yeah, I think one of the upcoming episodes is definitely going to have to be conversations around religion, and not just how it's showing up in the political world, in the political aspect, but there are so many conversations that we need to start having about religion and spirituality and who is God? What is God? How are you defining God? How am I defining God? Because for there to be this rise in Christian nationalism and people really believing that they are making these decisions out of what God would have wanted, we really are going to have to start getting clear about what God they are praying to. Okay. We're going to really have to start digging into that a lot more. But that was some of the initial things that I was seeing after the Charlie Kirk death was the social media aspect. And then, child, let me tell you something. I looked up one day and I said, who is this woman on the news with all the theatrics? And it was the one, the only Erica Kirk. Now, one of the key things that I said in my first initial thoughts about this entire situation was, I'm not sure if it's included, but one of the initial things that I said was, what is going to happen after killing that man is you make him into a martyr. And outside of the fact that I really don't think it's a good idea for people to be going around just shooting people, right? Political reasons or not, that's just not, I don't think that's the best strategy in terms of moving this country forward. In addition to that, though, it was just kind of like, what happens when you make this man a martyr? When you make someone a martyr, their movement lives on. Now you give a movement a bigger platform, right? Now they're doing it in the name of not only God, but now you have to do it in the name of this lost life, right? And that was one of my initial fears when I heard that, this man was killed was, oh my goodness, the MAGA movement has a martyr. And it is Charlie Kirk now. And when I looked up a few days after, seeing or hearing that he was murdered, I saw his wife holding a press conference, and she was giving her first public statements. And I did not watch the whole thing. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I did not watch that whole thing, okay? And I'm not gonna play it on my platform. But what I will say is one key statement that Charlie Kirk's wife, Erica Kirk, made in her first public statement was, and I wanna quote her. She said, "The movement my husband built will not die. The movement my husband built will not die." And to me, that is the scariest thing that she could have said. The movement that her husband built is a movement based off of evil. It's built off of racism and sexism and xenophobia and just pure hatred. That's the movement that her husband built. It's ultimately the movement that I believe got her husband killed. But now that he's been taken out in the way that he has, again, she is now going to move on his legacy and pick up where he left off. And if I'm being honest with y'all, I'm a little bit more concerned about Erica Kirk than Charlie Kirk, because Erica Kirk is moving around as if she was born for this moment, okay? Like the brokenhearted widow who lost her husband to a violent act. Like this woman is prepared for this, okay? And I hate to be so animated about it, but seriously, watching her the past few weeks since her husband has died, I've just been like, you can't really comment on how people grieve, but the way she's been moving, it's just like her instant rise to the spotlight, her instant rise to the MAGA movement, the Trump administration. She has been everywhere, and she is absolutely going to be the face of this evil movement. I also want to talk about the funeral, which, if I'm being honest, I don't know if this is a funeral or if this was a campaign rally. Because when I tell you there were thousands and thousands of people who attended this funeral, I believe the funeral lasted for like hours and hours. And also, like, why was the President of the United States at this funeral? Like, we know why, but also why? You know what I'm saying? Charlie Kirk was a podcaster. He was not a member of Congress. He was not, in the executive branch. He's like, literally, he was a podcaster. And the President of the United States found that it was so important for him to be there. There's a reason for that, right? It's all connected. I do want to talk a little bit about I do want to talk a little bit about number one, going back to Erica Kirk. Did y'all see her entrance at the funeral? Did y'all see her entrance at the funeral? Like, what is this? Why do we have fire going off? They had, I believe, like an AI version of Charlie Kirk or something. I was seeing on social media, someone was saying that, well, actually, I'm not gonna say that. Well, let's keep it moving. But what I do want to talk about is, in addition to the sitting president of the United States attending a random podcaster's funeral / rally, I do want to point out a statement that Donald Trump said during his whatever he was up there doing. Donald Trump said, and I quote, he said that he hates his opponent and doesn't want the best for them. Let's put a pin in it right there. The president of the United States of America went on stage in front of thousands of people and explicitly stated that he hates his opponents and that he does not want the best for them. Am I missing something? If you're like me, the first thing you got to be thinking is, who the hell is your opponent? Who the hell is your opponent? Because if this was any other normal, administration, it would be safe to assume that his opponent was, one of our, foreign enemies. You know what I'm saying? But in this administration, where Black and brown folks are being targeted, where immigrants are being targeted, where the middle to lower class is being targeted, it feels like everybody is his freaking opponent, which means damn near everybody is who he doesn't care about. And we already know that, but to have the president of the United States just explicitly say that is a completely different story. And it's scary, Like, it's scary to me. It really, really is. What else? And then what makes it all just so, interesting, for lack of better words, is the White House actually posted after Charlie Kirk's funeral / campaign rally or rally, they posted a picture of Donald Trump overlooking the funeral crowd, and the caption said something to the effects of the turning point. And it really makes you think. It really makes you think. I didn't go nearly as deep into any of these issues as I could have, but I really wanted to paint the broader picture, which is after this initiating event, which was the killing of Charlie Kirk, we see the progression. We see what, the aftermath looks like, and what it will mean for us months and even years down the line. And so I had to address that, and will continue to do so. And that's it. That was kind of heavy. We went from Cardi B to Trump. We went from Cardi B to Charlie Kirk. Wait, let me back that up. We went from Cardi B to Charlie Kirk, all in one podcast episode. But that's what we do on this side of YouTube and Spotify and however you are watching and streaming. If you enjoyed this podcast and you want to stay up to date on things that are happening around the world, then this is the perfect podcast for you to be listening to. If you want not only to stay up to date on things that are happening in politics, but things that are happening, socially in our society, or on social media, or in hot topics, or even things that I'm experiencing personally, then this is the podcast for you. We are on episode 13, and I have already gained so much from shooting this podcast and even putting it out, that I am just so excited to continue doing that and to continue being a platform where people can come, high key, you know what I'm saying? We like to have a good time over here, but also get real information and real perspective and real opinions. And I will continue to do so as long as I have my fundamental right to do so. So with that being said, I appreciate you for watching. Make sure that if you haven't, that you go ahead, you like this video, you subscribe, and stay on the lookout for more videos, not only the podcast videos, but stay on the lookout for other videos and content that I post on the YouTube channel in between time. I hope that you take care of yourself in these strange times, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.
It's